again, welcome back. I put on the fireside behind me because this is going to be a fireside chat, and I have SC Moari in the room. You could say it's not in the virtual room. She's the managing partner of Mighty Capital, but she has a huge background in building great products for billions of people. She has been working on at Facebook, advising and investing, Airbnb, and a lot more. She's praised by a lot of people in the Valley as a genius at making mobile products that people love. So I'm very excited to have her here. SC, welcome to Sprint.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I love that fireplace in the background. So perfect.
Yeah. So here it's getting late, so it's evening is falling in, but on your end of the world, I think it's morning, right?
It's the morning. Yes. It's just about 9 a.m. My day started. So 4 hours ago.
No time for firesides yet.
No fires at this hour. No.
Perfect. So you are at the moment an investor, investing in digital products. Some of those everybody know and are probably using. Airbnb is one of those, But I want to go back to a little bit of your background as a product designer and product developer. You were previously founder of a company, and that was acquired by Facebook, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then at Facebook, you started to work on several products. Can you tell a little bit about kind of like the products that you've built and what was so exciting about creating those products?
Yes, absolutely. So at Facebook, I worked on 2 product lines. The first one is the Facebook notifications. So all the push notifications you get on your phone, all the email notifications you get in your inbox, the badges that show up in your app, just on your home screen or inside your app. You can blame me for all that. I can tell you a story about that. One of the most popular notifications that we send to our users is helping them celebrate their friend's birthday. And we were so worried about about that particular notifications because most of the folks who work for Facebook have 500, 1,000 or more friends. And so you can imagine how many notifications for a birthday that could represent. But the average Facebook user at the time only had maybe 100 friends or so on the network. And so with a little bit of smarts, excluding some people and so on and so forth, it's actually a very delightful experience. That's one thing. And then the other product I worked on was advertising. So the Pages tools.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for reminding me every now and then that I have friends first in the first place, and that it's their birthday. And that was... if only I could only turn on that notification and turn off all the others. Nowadays, I tend to turn off a lot of notifications for several apps. And maybe that's also a question I want to ask you is kind of like push notifications are a super powerful tool to engage with an audience. But how do you make sure that people don't turn them off? When do you know? Yeah, how do you decide on the frequency and when to trigger?
Yes, that's a great question, and it's something that I think we all want to know more about. If you ask me like the product question, now that I was product manager on this, you can actually turn like specific types of notifications on and off, but you kind of have to be an engineer to know where to find it, right? Because it's really complicated. So very few people actually do this, but if you're building products and you want your notifications to be valued, i.e. received, then you need to think about like what, how they impact your user. And the way I think about it is when is the right time to send a notification or to make a demand, because that's really what it's about, right? If you're going to bring enough value to your users and your customers, then they're going to answer to your demands, and their demands may be a push notification, maybe a request for permission of accessing some information, and so on and so forth. My general philosophy around that is, if you're going to ask something of your users, you sort of have to think about decision tree, like, is this something I have to have in order to deliver a delightful experience? Like, is this a must-have, or is this a nice-to-have? If it's a must-have, then I need to make that request as soon as possible. And if it's a nice-to-have, then as late as possible. And I'll give you an example. If you look at WhatsApp, for example, and you look at the service, it's a real-time messaging, right? So demanding that your users receive push notifications is a must-have. Otherwise, you cannot do real-time messaging. So you need to ask for it as soon as possible. And in fact, WhatsApp asks for it the minute you open the app for the first time. You haven't signed up even yet. You need to be able to accept push notifications. But the permission to send a photo, that's a nice-to-have, because not everybody sends a photo on WhatsApp. So you need to ask for it as late as possible, i.e. when, if I want to send you a photo, I'm already sort of going through the motion, and then ask me, hey, can I access your camera roll? Like, give me some value, Mr. Customer. Of course, because I'm going to get some value out of it. Right? So must have as early as possible, nice to have as late as possible.
Yeah, I think that's very very well said, because sometimes you have these apps and they start off with, the first notification, I need to access your contacts, then I need to access this, then I need to access that, and that's kind of like when you already tune out. So that also has to do with onboarding and trust. And I mean, when looking at companies, and can you say something about kind of like what you've seen when it comes to certain products and especially mobile apps in terms of usage? So as a user, you download it, but I believe there's a big drop off of people that have been downloading it and actually open the app. Is there anything to say about that, and how does onboarding influence how people use it?
Yes. The way I think about onboarding is the first question is when does onboarding start and when does onboarding end? And I think that's a key question, because once you have these boundaries as a product manager, you know the answers. But defining these boundaries is actually really, really important. So onboarding starts the moment a user interacts with your product, which starts way before they get to your product. It's, the recommendation that I'm going to make that, you should get on WhatsApp, so we do real-time messaging, or the email you get that invites you to, download something, or the ad you see. And that's when onboarding begins. So onboarding begins in marketing land, right? And you're in marketing land for a while until you have enough touch points that you hit the product. But that's not the end of onboarding. Most people say, oh, the end of onboarding is once I sign up. But actually, that's not the end of onboarding. The end of onboarding is you've boarded, right? Like, you actually have delivered the value you said you would. So there's two ways to think about that. One way is you've created enough delight that there's a natural reason for people to come back to your service. Perfect example is, first time you use Uber, you download the app, you sign out, you say, hey, I want to go to work, or I want to go to my parents, whatever. You get in, you click two buttons, right? You get into the car, you get out of the car, you don't pay, you don't do anything. It's delightful. And so the end of that first ride is the end of onboarding for Uber, because that's when you got me hooked to the experience. So that's one way, which is you provide enough delight, surprise, satisfaction, meeting the need. The other way, when you may not be in a position to do that because sometimes the problem you're solving is just plain unpleasant. An example of that is you're looking for a place to rent. Like, nobody likes to rent. It's perceived as a waste of money. It's an extremely time-consuming and frustrating process. But if you're able, as part of your onboarding, to say, hey, I know you're on my platform on Zillow or Trulia or something, and you're looking for a place to rent, and it seems like your criteria are pretty clear. You want a 2-bedroom apartment in this neighborhood under that price range with the garage, something like that. Well, here are, 5 other places that meet your criteria. And by the way, if you give us your email, we could send you more of these places. Well, that's the end of your onboarding, because the user has had that moment where he says, okay, now you're going to make my job easier. I'm delighted. Like, here's my email. And then I don't need to be here anymore. I can just go away and just check my email when there's a new place. So defining onboarding, I think, is really important.
Yeah. So within the product team, you're saying kind of like you should define where onboarding starts, where it ends, and focus on that particular challenge, basically, on how to engage with the right people.
Correct.
So you're now an investor. What do you look for in the products you're in, or in the companies you're investing in?
Yes. So believe it or not, the product is one of the things I look at last. And the reason for that is pretty simple. I love product. Obviously, I build product. I'm a geek. I wrote a book on products and what makes a great product. And so if I start getting into a product before I think about an investment as a business decision, like, am I going to make money? Then I'll just fall in love with technology, and we know where that can lead. And so when I invest, there are some pretty fundamental criteria we're looking at, like the team, like the market opportunity, the financials. And then there's a really critical criteria we look at, which is the fit with the value we offer as a firm. And the value we offer as a firm is access to one of the largest networks of product managers in the world. That's over 300,000 product managers. And so our portfolio companies, one way that I talk to them, I say, hey, do you think you could take advantage of 300,000 product managers? And if I see like a jaw drop, like, man, I could hire at scale, I could sell my product because these are my buyers, or, maybe the chief product officer at whatever, Salesforce or so on, will buy me, right? So I need to get in touch with this chief product, VP of product, then I know I have a great fit. And if I'm like, if I hear a reaction where it's like, product manager is like, what are these people? What do they do? Then we may not be such a good fit for them, because the value we bring isn't relevant to them.
Yeah, so team market opportunity is basically standard for each investor, but what you're bringing to the table is the connection to a large ecosystem of product managers. And if that's a fit, then Mighty Capital might be a fit as well. But I do like your approach, as you say, like, if I look into the product, I fall in love, I might make the wrong decision. But you have to look at the product at some point. So, So let's say that's in your case, then during due diligence or so. So, that they're excited about raising capital, that they have a great team, that the market opportunity is good, and that they have something that they like in you, and having that extra community of product managers. What are you then looking at when you go and look at the due diligence on the product? What are the criteria you are looking at?
Yes. So you're asking what makes a great product? What do I think makes a great product? Which, by the way, if you go to our product community, productsthatcount.com, you'll see, like, it's been 5 years. I'm trying to answer that question with some clarity across, industry, geography, stage. It's a very difficult question because it's constantly evolving. But if you think from first principles, which is something product managers love to do, think, okay, what really makes a great product? Well, the key insights for me that I've gathered from, speaking with by now thousands of C-level, VP level in product, and from my dozen years of experience, is our technology has become an extension of ourselves. And so if we think, I want to build a great product, or I want my product to be better or great, you have to think like, okay, so what makes a great person? Because that way I have a North Star, right? I'm going to make my customer or my user or my B2B customer a better person. And so what makes a great person? There's not a lot of frameworks out there that define even what a person is. So I live in California, so I use the mind, body, spirit framework to describe it. And I say there are 3 rules to what makes a great person, which therefore there are 3 rules to what makes a great technology product. The body rule, like we all want to look good, we all want to be beautiful, and we expect that our technology will also be beautiful. And it's not about pretty pictures, right? It's about efficiency, user experience, and it's about an emotional like wow factor. The second rule, the spirit rule, we all want to have meaningful lives. And so we expect that our technology will also give us meaning. And that means they have to be personalized, and they at the same time have to respect our privacy. And then finally, the mind rule, we all want to keep growing and learning. That's why you have such a great platform, and why you have an audience. And therefore, we also need and want our technology to grow and evolve with us. So how do we as product managers teach technology how to learn? And I know this is a little bit abstract, a little bit philosophical. We can go into a lot more detail if you want, but that's what I think makes a great product.
Yeah, so that's also something you describe in your book, right? Mobilized.
Correct.
And
correct.
Correct. I see that book behind you in the.
It's right here. Yeah, good catch.
Is that a signed copy or not?
I don't know. I have to check if I signed this one.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, but so I guess everybody wants to know like what is the secret of building a great product, and there's so many different products, different companies, so it's very hard to really pinpoint it to it. But if you look at the product in itself, are you also I presume you're also looking at kind of like some quantitative metrics, because you can look at a product, you can think like, hey, the body, mind, spirit is good with this, but you also are going to ask kind of like, what are the reactions of your users in this, and what are those quantitative measures that you would like to see, or if somebody's raising money, what should they measure?
Yes, this is a great question, and this is one that when we talk to these product leaders, they struggle the most with, because what you're asking is like, what's the core KPI of great products, right? When we talk to salespeople, what's the core KPI to sales? Well, bring money. What's the core KPI to marketing? Qualified leads. What's the core KPI to product? Don't know, it depends. People have come up with this idea that there is something called product market fit. Product market fit is this sort of line in the sand where you iterate, you search like what makes a great product, mind, body, spirit, MVP, like all these methodologies. And then at some point I'm going to hit product market fit and I'll be in growth mode. And that's not at all how it works. Like what happens is product market fit, I think is actually a myth, because the moment you start hitting this notion of product market fit, like I have a few customers who want to pay me for what I've built, you lose it, right? These customers are going to start making requests, and that's going to, upset some of your other customers, and then you're going to win new customers. So you're going to be on this sort of constant quest. There's like more like 50 shades of product market fit. So I don't believe that this is a valid way to define success in products. So therefore, like, what is success? And we're all building products for corporations and organizations. So at the end of the day, the metrics that I look at are the ones that like tie back what products are being built to the revenue that they generate for the organization. And so I use this, I call that the product equation. And it's also very simple, right? The revenue is, we learned that in economics, right, is volume times price. So volume is the number of transactions. Price is the price per transaction. And the number of transactions, depending on the kind of product, it can be like maybe a high velocity product, like Amazon, for example. One customer will buy many things. Or a low velocity product like a Mercedes, like one customer will buy, one car in general. So your product equation is really revenue is number of customers times number of transactions per customer times revenue per transaction. And if as a product manager, you're able to show me how you're going to drive each of these three KPIs, then that's how you build a great product, because number of customers, right? What's my acquisition strategy? How am I going to get more people to use my product? Number of transactions for customers, engagement strategy. How am I going to get these people to come more often and be delighted consistently? And then revenue per transaction, monetization strategy. How am I going to manage, pricing, profitability of my product? And then what happens in product teams.
That also means that somebody who is a product leader needs to have a clear understanding of not only technology and how to build a good product, but also the monetization part of it, and also have kind of like be very interested in not only build great products, but also care about the bottom line, what that product brings to the business. Correct?
That's correct. And to me, that's the key distinction between what a great product manager is versus a great project manager. And interestingly, when you look at, sort of the last few years, we've seen companies now say, oh, I'm going to use product as a competitive advantage, or I'm going to become a product first company. Like you hear things like that. What really they're trying to say is the product function, which typically was, a sub function reporting to engineering or reporting to marketing, is now elevated to be a C-suite function. And product management is about having that understanding of both technology and business, which means if you're able to impact, top line metrics like revenue, then you're in the C-suite.
And that's something you see happening. Is that do you think that's a good? Is that a good sign when it happens within the company? I mean, you're a product person, so I guess you would say yes. What can you say about it?
What do I think about that? I think it's a great thing. Fantastic. I think product people are people who are naturally able to compute a lot of variables for sort of the greater good. So I do think it's a great thing. But what I see is a lot of product leaders are struggling because there's no blueprint for what a world-class product organization looks like. And so, they more and more they get mandate or green light from their CEO and the leadership to go build a product first organization, or go create a fantastic high performing product teams, but they don't necessarily know how to go about it because it's complicated. Every product is different.
It is, but that's also so exciting, of course. And every product is different, but now we also see that the timing is also of essence. So 3 months ago, the world was different than it is right now. Right now, as an investor, are there any things you're looking at to invest in a company with the current situation that we're living in?
Yes, absolutely. We're actively investing, and that's a fortunate position to be in because we have enough, dry powder to make new investments. What we look for are investments that are, call them COVID proof, right? So either they will, be not benefiting, it's not the right term, obviously, but they will help the fight against COVID. So a lot of life science companies are in that situation, or they will be recession proof. And so that's one thing. And then the other thing we look for is wartime CEOs, right? So we're in a recession now, and we want people who think that every dollar matters, and they want to make the most out of the capital that they have, and they focus on revenue generation. So yes, it's wartime right now.
Okay. Well, it's a good time to be an investor, I would say.
Yes, it is.
You already answered quite a lot of the questions that came out of the audience, but there's an interesting one here. I think I'm going to read it out because it's long. But how do you build your team around the mind, body, spirit methodology, and then how do you facilitate the growth of those different team members? And do you feel this translates into the outcome of the product?
Yes, that's a massive question. That's a great question. I'm going to say what you're asking is how do I create a high performing culture in product? And what I believe is the nature of a great product manager, like by definition, it's somebody who constantly brings innovation inside a corporation, so needs to do things differently constantly, otherwise they don't stay sharp. And so the approach that I suggest for product leaders is to create a system of continuous learning and personalized product coaching at scale. Let me explain what I mean. There are some sort of fundamental questions that you need your product managers to answer and be able to learn so that they're not project managers. And these questions are, what makes a great product? So you can use my framework or another. I recommend you use many because it's all about innovating. What makes a great product manager, which is what are the competencies that a product manager needs? And they are so varied, right? Early stage in the product lifecycle, late stage, junior product managers, senior product managers. What are the competencies of great product managers? And then we still hear that the key challenge product managers are facing are working with engineers. And what we hear is, it's about negotiating. It's about managing conflict. I'd love to hear more. It's about, collaborating and aligning, which is, those KPIs we were talking about. So creating a great product culture, there's no silver bullet. It's not like one single methodology, but it's the ability to create that personalized coaching at scale for your team. Like a junior PM versus somebody who's been here 15 years and is a subject matter expert. They need the same thing, but they need different things.
Yeah, great explanation. I think also what I'm hearing is product and development have to work obviously together and not against each other in order to make great products. And product also has the role to kind of like work with the rest of the company as well. So that's kind of like the balance that a product manager needs to have on the one hand, working very closely with development and design, and on the other hand, also with the business teams and sales and marketing. And what then one other question from the audience is here. When you're building your team as a product first company, how would you then say that works between product and engineering and design? So in terms of like who's in the C-suite? Is everybody in the C-suite? Is there a chief design officer in the C-suite, chief product officer, and a chief technology officer? How would you design that organization?
Well, definitely the chief product officer needs to be in the C-suite. Engineering, design, the thing that we see happening with products that we're 5 years old, right? For the first, say, 3 years of the organization, we were mostly these, Silicon Valley techies doing their own thing. And in the last 2 years, with the sort of the globalization of the network, we've also become cross-industry. And so now, the network has about half of it is tech, and the rest is not tech. It's finance, it's retail, it's life sciences, and many more industries. And so what you see happen is in tech, yes, there's a seat at the C-suite table for the engineers and the designers and the product manager because that's the nature of their business to build technology. But in these non-technology industry, there's a lot of questions like, okay, do we even want to talk about technology in the boardroom or in the C-suite? I don't know, like this is sort of back office, right? This is IT. So I think in situations like that, it's not about whether it's one or the other that needs to go in the C-suite. It's about more like aligning interest and saying, let's make it happen, right? Software is eating the world. Let's bring technology at large, right, in the C-suite. Whether it starts with engineering or with design or with product, it's sort of a case-by-case basis, but it needs to happen. Otherwise, that particular organization is not likely to survive.
And we're running a little bit out of time, but I have just more of a personal interest question, because I would love to know what you think is a great product, as in one that you are using.
Yes. You know, there's like a million different ones. I'm going to pick one that's, you know, personally very meaningful to me, which is Tinder, because that's where I met my husband.
Ah, that's great. I have a great story about Tinder as well. I was the first user in Europe of Tinder.
Oh, wow. That's big.
So I got an email from Sean. He said, like, hey, I'm building something new. If you want, you can download the app and test it out. So I downloaded the app and I onboarded, and then I emailed him back. I said, like, hey, yeah, thanks so much. Onboarding looks great, but now what? He said, like, don't you see any other people? I was like, no, there's nothing here. Not in 150 kilometers. He's like, where are you based? I'm like, I'm in Amsterdam. He's like, oh no, it shouldn't be in the App Store outside of the US. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I was one of the first, but then 2 months later, there were a lot. But I'm happily married, but not via Tinder though. I would, one last question from the audience. I think this is probably somebody who's working on a product right now or on a startup. What are you looking for in that first pitch?
Tell me what you mean by that. Sorry.
So the first pitch to you as an investor. What are you looking for?
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the context. Yeah. So it's interesting. We very much like to hear the story of the company, and the story can be told actually in 30 seconds or a couple of minutes. We want to hear something that sounds like this: like, we are a unique team solving a big and hard problem with a sustainably differentiated solution, which we monetize fairly. And so our early traction is very big, and our financial, as a result, look really promising. But to execute our vision, we need money, and we have a credible plan to return that money. And so it's such a short, tight story, but it actually touches on all the key points that we really care about. Right? We're a unique team, big and hard problem, sustainably differentiated solution, traction, some numbers, raising money, and close to an exit or planning for an exit.
Cool. Well, that's very clear. Thank you so much for being with us today and to share your knowledge. I'm looking forward to use more of the products that you've invested in. I hope you will also create some more beautiful products for this beautiful world. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.